War. War never changes.
Some kind of war junkie?
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
Welcome to the War 102 podcast, where we explore the doctrine, theory, philosophy, and history of warfare. I'm your guide, Paul Darling, and I want to share what I learned in nearly 30 years in uniform. So let's get to learning about the most influential activity in human history, war. Welcome to another special edition, the Iran-Israel War, Battle of the Cities, Part 2. A brief update to my previous special edition on the constitutional conflict between Trump and Newsom on the activation of the California Guard. As predicted, a federal appeals court ruled in favor of Trump. The deference to federal power over states' rights will transcend normal ideological alliances, and the liberal Ninth Circuit realized that to rule for Newsom would undermine the planned erosion of states' rights and ruled accordingly. So with that out of the way, let's address the headlines of the moment. Israel attacked Iran's government, nuclear weapons capability, and military to a degree that I, and many others, thought impossible. Many have surmised, with some justification, that the United States participated directly in the attack. I disagree. What enabled this unsurprising attack with surprising results was the recent change in the geopolitical landscape of the Maghreb, specifically the fall of Syria. Post-revolutionary Iran's defensive posture was built upon two fundamental assumptions: an allied Syria and hostile Iraq, neither of which is the situation today. While previously I had assumed that any such attack would need the assistance of Saudi Arabia, this is no longer the case. All that is really required is an acquiescent, or at least impotent, Syria, where Israel could fuel and possibly land in and over Syrian territory. If you look at the map, you will see how the unfettered access to Syria would allow sustained air operations against Iran. Additionally, Israeli versions of the F-16 and F-15, creatively called the I models, maximize the use of what are known as conformal fuel tanks. These body-hugging fuel pods minimizing drag while maximizing range. Israeli F-35s and air-launched cruise missiles undoubtedly provided the bulk of the initial attack. The follow-on attacks in the now shockingly, apparently permissive airspace over Iran are probably being conducted by F-15s and F-16s primarily. This is, of course, not the first time Israel has preemptively attacked a threat nation's nuclear weapons production facility. Both Syria and Iraq saw their nascent nuclear weapons program shattered by Israeli attacks. So the threat to do so always existed. Iran mitigated this through a distributed nuclear weapons complex and the greatly increased distance between the two countries. What is far more profound is this is not a limited precision strike measured in minutes, but rather a prolonged campaign designed to weaken the IRGC to such a degree that internal revolution may yet again be possible. This is an existential threat to the beards of Quam, as the ruling Guardian Council is mockingly referred to by some. Israel is not there to weaken Iran. They are there to enable Iranian dissidents to overthrow the government. As with any attempt at regime change, the unknown permutations of possible end states make this a highly dangerous course of action. However, it is the only means by which Iran's nuclear program can be permanently ended. The Ayatollahs will never give up their quest for nuclear weapons. No deal is possible. And as long as they openly pray for the death of Israel, as well as America, this is probably the best course of action for both nations. The timing of the raid was driven by several factors. The most important one is the election of Donald Trump. Israel probably could not have undertaken this attack without the tacit approval of the American government. This is not to say the American military aided Israel beyond probably intelligence sharing, but Israel, having abandoned its indigenous fighter plane programs of the 80s, they are completely reliant upon the United States for its combat aircraft. Second, as noted, the fall of the Assads has opened up Syrian airspace, allowing Israeli jets to penetrate far deeper into Iranian territory than they were previously capable. Israel provided support for the rebels, and the bill has come due. Third, Israel's successful neutering of Hezbollah means the Iranian threat of counterattack through Lebanon no longer exists. Hamas and Gaza are in the same boat. They are in survival mode. As an asymmetric means of attack, they are largely irrelevant. This is not to say Iran is impotent. In fact, their counterattack by missiles has proven greater than the previously discussed Israeli missile defense network can handle. Iran is repeating the Battle of the Cities from the Iran-Iraq war strategy, hoping to inflict enough civilian casualties to force the Israeli government to abandon its campaign. This will fail. One, Israeli attitude towards civilian casualties has hardened after the death of 1,400 on October 7th. Iran would have to kill far more than that, probably over 10,000, before the Israeli people would acquiesce to the current Iranian government remaining in power. And even that might fail. Iran has demonstrated its strategy is to terrorize civilian populations. It has also reiterated its commitment to gaining nuclear weapons. The two are not viewed in isolation by the bulk of the Israeli public. In fact, Netanyahu's government has seemingly suffered very little domestic criticism in the past week. Iran has made this an existential fight for Israel. They are responding accordingly. Internationally, Israel cares about one country's opinion only, and that is the United States. Iran decided to not cut a deal with Trump within the 60-day timeline he imposed. Had they made a deal, even when they had very little intent on keeping, they would have had enough leverage to stop Israel. They fucked around. Now they're finding out. In the current situation, Iran is almost out of missiles and facilities to launch them, and Israel is probably entirely out of David's sling and arrows. For Iran, lacking any ability to strike Israel outside its missile force, this is catastrophic. Israel still has the ability to strike missiles before they launch with the air supremacy they shockingly enjoy over Iran, killing the archer and not the arrow, always being the preferred method. It may be considered that Iran is saving some missiles for a surprise attack later. They're most certainly saving missiles, but I suspect it is because they can't extract them from the tunnel system without being destroyed by Israeli aircraft and drones. Iran has to employ maximum force, otherwise risk continued attacks by Israel and a growing confidence from the anti-IRGC elements within their own country. Another aspect of the Israeli attacks was the use of drones based in Iran to attack the Iranian air defense network. Mirroring the Ukrainian attack against the Russian air bases, this proved highly effective and effectively unstoppable. The massive amount of land purchased by Communist China in the United States, and much of it nearby U.S. air bases, has to be considered within this context. The big question now is what happens to the facilities buried deep underground. The U.S. has bunker-busting munitions, currently only deliverable by B-2 bombers, but conceivably droppable by C-130Js, which Israel possesses. With the current air domination enjoyed, a C-130 could drop the bomb at night, probably safely, and, more to the point, could be dropped by a B-2, and then Israel takes credit. Another possibility is the landing of an infantry assault force in Iran to use its tunnel fighting techniques learned in Lebanon and Gaza and use it against these facilities. Or simply bomb the known entrances and air supplies and let nature take its course. As noted, ultimately, Israel's equation is that the only permanent solution to the Iranian nuclear program is the end of the Islamic revolutionary government in Iran. And I think they are correct. The Ayatollahs will never give up their aim of nuclear weapons. For one, this current attack proves that in the absence of nuclear weapons, they have no effective deterrence. But ultimately, with Israel having made peace with the bulk of its near and far Arab neighbors, the loss of its proxy armies in Syria, Lebanon, and most likely Gaza, the Twelver Shia dream of eradicating Israel can only be achieved with nuclear weapons. Time is running out for them. External to the two immediate belligerents, a return to a pro-Western Iran would be a huge win for the United States, less so for Europe. The war currently is a disaster for Russia, who, outside energy, earns its money selling its now seemingly worthless military wares. Iran was equipped with Russia's finest air defense systems. How'd that go for them? China will be annoyed at the loss of cheap sanctioned discounted oil and that America had a win. For China, all global politics is zero-sum game between the United States and the Chinese Communist Party. This would effectively lock them out of the Persian Gulf, save a relationship they enjoy with Qatar. Iraq would be in a bit of a pickle, as its government is, in effect, a quasi-proxy of Iran. The Shia Arabs currently running the country would be absolutely isolated from all governments, unless they maintain their allegiance to a now Western-aligned Iran. The anti-American fanatics America somehow continues to fund and train would be forced to ideologically realign or flap in the wilderness with Sunni and Kurds waiting in the wings. How much popular support the IRGC has in Iran, I really have no idea. I am sure arguments can be made both ways. However, a strong indication is that the attacks by Israel has apparently weakened support for the government. Ordinarily, an attack by an external power unites a country politically. But this doesn't appear to be the case in Iran, which would indicate the Ayatollahs are deeply unpopular. With Russia involved in its own military disaster, Chinese support may be the only lifeline the ROGC can count on. What this will cost the ROGC is unknown, but it won't be free. Iran is used to running the proxies, not becoming one. But I think they will have no choice. Russia's sponsorship will turn into Chinese sponsorship, and one mandating far greater control since, unlike Russia, they don't care about Iranian money. They are far more interested in becoming a bigger player in the Persian Gulf, which will necessitate Beijing dictating Tehran's actions to a far greater degree than Moscow dared, which would probably translate to a lessening of rhetoric focusing on Israel and ramping up anti-American sentiments and actions. As for Israel, their dream of being left alone is, for the first time since 1948, at hand. Iran remains the last major regional power directly antagonistic to its existence. I don't see them backing off the pressure unless ordered to by Trump, which I also don't think will happen, or a shocking resurgence by Iran showing a military competency and power orders of magnitude greater than what they have shown thus far. And finally, as for America, one of the major anti-American governments may fall without us having to lift much of a finger. It appears that Israel neither needs nor really wants our help. In 1956 and 1973, Israel suffered much from the appearance of relying on Western military support. They required diplomatic support, would like global messaging support, would certainly accept economic support in the form of munitions, and, from my perspective, really doesn't want America involved militarily, as the existential threat posed by Iran appears to be gone for the foreseeable future. Also, with Trump presenting himself as the peace president, I doubt any meaningful military support is on the table anyway. Saudi Arabia might be the most likely candidate for direct military support. However, they are limited in providing what Israel could probably use most, a viable troop option. Can regime change be executed with airstrikes alone and without a follow-up occupation force? History says no. But if the current Iranian government is as unpopular as some have surmised and current events seems to bear out, maybe. In the words of the great Dennis Miller, that's just my opinion, I could be wrong. Let me know what you think and catch me later next week as I go over the Battle of Marathon. Thanks for listening today. If you want to help the show, please share today's episode on any social media sites you can. Check out the War 102 Buzzsprout website for more information and to send me a message. And, of course, my thanks to the subscribers who help keep the show going. Hope you all join me next week. See you soon.